So first things first, Brittany, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm not too bad, not too bad at all. We had a great weekend and now it's thunder and lightning.
Oh, it was the opposite for us. It was rain all weekend and now finally sunshine.
Okay, well, that's good. At least somebody gets to enjoy the day. Um,
Yep.
before we get into everything that you've been up to lately and the new album, I'd like to jump back to the beginning a little bit because I have a couple of questions. Now, I do know you grew up with metal music through your brother and older family, and you were classically trained as a singer. When did putting thoughts onto paper become prominent in your life?
Um, well, it was actually when we were living in Victoria. I was going to university, and Scott and I were together, and he introduced me to 3 Inches of Blood
Mm.
and a few other, kind of local bands and some touring metal bands, and it was actually seeing them live and watching Scott and his band play live that I was like, wait a minute, I can totally do this, you know? And because I was still singing in choir at the time, and it wasn't, I mean, like I loved singing and I loved heavy metal, but it was never something that I was like, ah,
Right.
let's do this. So that was really kind of it. When I saw people that were just like me going up on stage and performing in these heavy metal bands, that I was really just like, yes, I think this might be what I'm meant to do. So that was awesome. It was really fun when Scott and the band that he was in broke up. I was like, well, why don't let's give it a try? I think I'd be good at this kind of a thing. So yeah, it was a long time ago, and thanks to 3 Inches of Blood for for being an inspiration for me.
But how did you then develop your own writing style, so to say? Because that very narrative kind of big, those big stories and yeah, very conceptual ideas. How did you kind of figure out how you wanted to write? Because I know you are an avid reader as well.
Mhm. It was so for Behold the Devastation, which was our first record, every song was its own little story, which was very much like an Iron Maiden thing, you know?
Mm,
It was like every song was had its own kind of, here's the villain, or that you want to stay away from, or here's the adventure that we're going on, or you know what I mean? So every song was inspired by something, and it was all just kind of their own little individual tracks. And that was how I wrote at first. It was each song was a story. And then I heard The Crucible of Man by Iced Earth and
mm,
realized the whole Something Wicked um, sort of, I guess it was a trilogy eventually, but that whole chronicle. And I was like, wait, this is a thing you can do? I was like, oh man, okay. And then of course Operation Mindcrime by Queensryche, and I was just like, oh, I gotta do this. And so that was when we did Demons of the Astroways, which was our second record, which was
right.
the worst way to write a concept album. It was
How come? How come?
well, because what we did was it was just I wrote it based on every night. We were all living together at the time, so every night we'd come to the living room and we'd jam. And we didn't have a living room. We had a jam spot, and then Braden would have like a riff, and he'd be like, "I was thinking about this one for the next song," and I'd be like, "Okay, cool. Oh, that sounds like they're going to battle. Like, let's make the next song about them going to battle." And I kind of wrote the story around the
Mm,
riffs and how, just kind of where we progressed musically.
sure.
And so it was a lot of fun, and it was a really cool kind of idea having everything be one big story, but there was just zero cohesiveness. And so Time Stand Still was kind of like we were in this really weird transition period, and so it was just like riffs from Braden and riffs from Grant and riffs from Andrew, and it was like just like, oh, let's and so that one had a very loose theme, which was what it was like to be an independent band on tour in Canada, and I just kind of wrote each song about like a different aspect of that. But then
Mm,
after that, I was like, okay, you guys, like I got an idea, and I actually got it from Soilwork in the way that Bjorn
okay.
wrote the Living Infinite, because what it was Bjorn is the singer, but he also can play guitar. And so he kind of, if I read this correctly, because it was like an article that I had read like a million years ago, he kind of wrote the foundation of the whole album from beginning to end himself and was like, this is the story and this is, how it's going to go. And I absolutely loved that record.
Mm.
Beginning to end, it felt so cohesive and it was all moving in the same direction. And there was never a moment where a song didn't feel like it fit. And there was no like jarring things, or it's just kind of like, oh, where does this song come from? And it was just like the perfect listen from beginning to end. And I was like, how do we achieve this? I can't play guitar, I can't write the whole album. So that's what I started doing, the track by track overviews, which is how
Mm.
we've written, you know, Apex, Abyss, and Phantoma. So what I would do is I would write each song, each chapter of the story as a song, and just kind of explain it to the boys. Okay, chapter one, this is what's happening in the story. This is how I want the song to sound. This is how I want the listener to feel. This is what should be going on. Here's a song that you can use as inspiration, or like, okay, this one's got to be fast,
Okay.
heavy, or this one's got to be four on the floor, or whatever. You know what I mean? And I would send that to the boys, and then we'd all write the album kind of together based on this overview. And that, I think, is when things really turned around, because we were just always working together and moving in the same direction when it came to songwriting. So, and then Apex came about, and we were kind of like, yes, okay, we got it now. Let's keep going. And so that was really kind of the moment. Yeah. So
But
thanks, Bjorn.
but it's very awesome the way you just laid it out. Do you see a parallel with the success then as well? Because as you mentioned, well, especially with the last two albums, it's always been to the up and to the right, but it really seems to have been going a little bit faster since Apex. So how do you
Yeah,
perceive
it's
this?
kind of like this a little.
But how do you perceive that kind of rise and success, and then you win a Juno Award? So does that kind of play into writing and for a next one? That do the ideas become even more ambitious?
I wouldn't say that they become more ambitious. It's just kind of there's just a little bit more pressure, I
Okay.
think, to do better. And I mean, yes, we can feel. I just think that the albums have been a little bit more digestible,
Mm.
these ones, because not only did we figure out our writing style, but we kind of figured out our sound. We figured out our production by going to Jacob. We really wanted Jacob on Time Stand Still, but it was too last minute for him to fit us into the schedule, so we ended up going with somebody else. And it's kind of unfortunate, but so we kind of figured that part out, and it's just, yeah, it just sort of all came together to create this album that was just easier to listen to, I think, for people. And so it was it was when it came to writing Abyss, because we knew so many people had found us through Apex and loved it. We were kind of like, so what do we do here? Do we write Apex 2, Electric Boogaloo, as everyone calls it? And and I had already told everyone that they were going to be connected, and that the stories for Apex and Abyss had been written at the same time, and the
Mm.
track by track overviews and everything were written at the same time. So it was they were already connected, but we didn't want to try and meet Apex, or to match it, or to do better than it. So we were just like, let's just do something different and see how that goes, see if that works. And but still stay true to that Apex sound and to what we do, but also try some new stuff. So, we were all really into synthwave at the time, so we threw some synth in there, and we still had our like super heavy death metal song, but we
Sure.
also played around with some other stuff, and it was just kind of like that pressure of meeting the expectations that people had after Apex. We were just like, "Ugh, no, well, let's just try something else." And so then we had the same feelings, the same sentiment with Phantoma. We were
Okay.
just kind of like, let's just try new stuff. Let's at the bottom of the track by track overview for this one, I had a little note that was like, let's try drawing from modern metal bands. Like, Iron Maiden is going to be forever ingrained in us, and our sound is always going to be influenced by that. There's nothing we can do about it. But that's kind of like the deep layers. Let's put something new on top that's more modern. Let's listen to bands that are doing something else, something different. That's why I just, like I love Ghost. So
Okay.
it's quite a bit of a Ghost vibe in some of those songs, and just kind of other bands that we've listened to and found over time, to be our favorite bands. And um, like it's funny because our friends Stryker from Alberta, they influenced this record because they're influenced by like old school 80s and trad metal and stuff like that. So we were like, well, let's take what Stryker does with those genres and use that as our inspiration instead of using, the old school bands. So it's kind of like our own little twist on what bands that we love nowadays and what they're doing. So I forget where I'm going with this, but
No, no, this is excellent. But I find that very interesting it kind of shows you how or the intricacies of how influences and inspiration work, where somebody can be inspired by somebody else's inspiration of something that happened in the 80s or something. So it's very
exactly,
interesting.
exactly. Yeah, no,
Um,
for sure.
in terms of that beginning stage, then, because whenever you start a new album cycle and you kind of, especially I think for you as being the principal lyricist of the band, does it fall on you to kind of sketch out the initial ideas? And for Phantoma, what was uh, I believe this idea was planted in your mind for Phantoma a while ago, right?
hmm Yeah, a long time ago. It was 2021, early 2021, and we weren't doing anything because the pandemic was in full swing. And so we couldn't tour, and we had this brand new album out, but it wasn't, it'd been out for a while, and so it was kind of the, yeah, the shine had worn off a little bit.
Yeah.
And so we were like, well, what do we do? Well, let's write the next record. Might as well, got nothing else going on. So we started writing Phantoma, and what we did was I had a few ideas sitting around for albums, and I was like, I just kind of sent like a quick synopsis of each idea to the boys and said, which one do you guys like the best and which one lends itself best to a 10 song record? And they all really liked the idea of Phantoma. And so it started with um, this story about an android who was AI, had started as AI, but had become sentient and had learned, because she's on the Netiverse, full access to every corner of it. And she sees humankind through this kind of, you know, um, yeah, like frame of reference that is very narrow, and she falls in love with them and becomes human because of what she's seen and what she's learned from the Netiverse. And when she finally meets humankind, she realizes that she's more human than a human because she learned from, I know I love that, like white zombie. That's totally was like from the beginning has been a phrase that I've thought about and kept in my mind because she learned from the best parts of them, only the parts
Mhm.
that showed to the world. And that was kind of like the main crux of the beginning of the story was about this android that um, creates herself based on the falsities that humankind puts out into the world. And it was also a very big sort of statement of what I feel about social media and just how fake everything is all the time. And it's really sad. And Phantoma is kind of a reflection of our youth right now, and how hard it is for them to discover themselves because they're so busy being influenced by
Mhm.
everyone on the internet. And so, yeah, and so the boys were just kind of like, yeah, I think Phantoma's the one. And so um, that was really where it started. It like ChatGPT and Dolly and all that stuff just didn't even exist, didn't even cross my mind. Like I
Sure.
didn't know about any of that stuff. And it was all just about um, about yeah, kind of finding yourself in this world and the way that it is now, and just taking all of the aspects of of life right now in society and kind of blowing it out of proportion. And climate
Mm.
change has seen its full potential, and the planet is no longer livable. And yeah, I'm sorry, I forget your
No,
question,
no, but
but
that's awesome because I had a thought just before the interview started, and it's not a very original thought, but it's just something that popped in. But why do you think a lot of these are especially fictional views of the future? Why are they always so dark, you think?
because we're humans. Um, yeah, it's really funny because when I wrote the initial story in 2021, it was very dark because it's the middle of the
Sure.
pandemic. And, shit was on fire. Everything was on fire, the whole world. And it was just kind of like, ugh, we're totally gonna screw this up, aren't we? And that was kind of how I felt. And so the initial track by track, Phantoma goes completely like full, full, I don't even know the word, full send on humanity and robot kind alike. And it's kind of just like, you all suck. None of you are what I thought it was going to be like. You're all going to die. And, and then when it came time to actually write the lyrics and I wrote the yearbook, which is
Mm,
like the whole story in 10 chapters. I had changed a little bit because the world had gotten a little bit brighter, and so Phantoma doesn't go quite
mm,
full send. She just kind of takes out the people that wronged her, and I have these two sides of me that are constantly like, oh, this planet is like humanity is so amazing. Everything that we've done, just everything that we've discovered, science, the cool stuff that we've created, the
sure.
beautiful things that we can make and that we can do it's just, like fills me with so much hope. Whenever something goes wrong, whenever we are confronted with an issue or a problem, we always figure it out. We're very resilient in that way. But also we just at the exact same time we love to destroy everything that we've created. And we just can't help ourselves, it seems. And so, like with climate change, we know what we're doing. We are fully cognizant of it, and yet we continue down this path. We continue to consume. We continue to need the next best thing. We continue to buy new iPhones every year. And you know what I mean? And it's just like, what are we doing? So that's really, it's quite prevalent in Phantoma in that there's this part of me that's like hopeful, and then there's the other part of me that's like a total nihilist that's just like, we're
Mm.
screwed. So yeah, it's
But
pretty funny.
as a historian, then, because this is I had a course at university about the way we remember things and
hmm
over time. And for instance, the way we look back now at the Industrial Revolution, how do you think people will look back at this AI era? It's an impossible question to answer, but it's maybe something interesting to talk about.
Well, no, I mean, it's exactly the same, right? The Industrial Revolution was like, oh my God, this is incredible. Assembly lines, let's just pump coal into the air and electrify everything. And holy cow, our lives are going to be so much better when, this is everywhere. And we were just so focused on what it could do that we didn't realize what it could destroy and what it could,
Sure.
how it was going to change the landscape of things. And we learned over time. We fixed things, sort of. Um, and
We gave it a go.
we put some band-aids on some stuff. And I think it's probably going to be exactly the same. Right now, it's just like, oh, we can use AI to make our day jobs easier, and it'll write our emails for us, and it'll summarize our meetings, and you know what I mean. And we're just so focused on this um, monotony kind of it. And eventually it's going to get to the point where it's like, oh, we should have seen what was coming. I think, we should have kind of slowed that train down a little bit. And we'll get to those points and we'll figure it out, and we'll, put some band-aids on, and then we'll look back again and be like, "Yeah, remember when you couldn't even walk 2 feet in London because the coal had filled the entire atmosphere with, you know, deadly, noxious gas. Like, we're gonna look back on AI at the same time. Like, remember when we just kind of let AI do everything and then we didn't realize that, you know, a bit of a Wall-E moment almost,
Yeah,
where like
sure.
it's like, wait, I haven't walked in 10 years. Like maybe I should try doing that. I feel like it'll probably be similar. Yeah.
With everything that you've kind of mentioned in terms of the story and some of the concepts behind it, when it comes down to the way you describe it, capturing those songs in music, and you describe it as putting these outlines out for the rest of the band, um, finding the right tones and textures to illustrate what you want, and that can be from your own vocals to the guitar tones to whatever. How tricky is that whole endeavor to make it sound like the way you want?
Yeah, I mean it's very it's a very collaborative effort for sure. So I'll send the track by track out, and then the boys will come back with riffs, and they'll say, you know, oh, I was thinking this riff for this song, and I'll say, yes, oh, that's perfect. Or I'll be like, actually, you know what, it's better for this song, and then,
Mm,
or I'll just say like, oh, you know what, I'm just not sure if that's the right, it's not right for this album. It's, you know, it's not the right sound, and um, and then we'll just kind of keep going along like that, and we'll kind of put the barest of pieces of the puzzle together, you know, the edges, and
mm,
then we'll we'll start kind of working on the riffs and extrapolating on the songs and the sounds and start making sure that everything is fitting in the right places and that every song is working with the one that comes next and you know and the one that came before, and we're always constantly writing the whole record and thinking of all the songs at the same time. So it's like, okay, yeah, we can do this part, but we already did something similar in the song before, so let's change it and be like, you know, do it like this or something like that. Um, and then it's like, okay, well, but yeah, but this is the moment of the song or of the album where, you know, she's having this crazy kind of existential crisis. Like there needs to be this epic break, you know, and so it's like, okay, well, let's do it like this or, you know, that kind of thing. So it's constantly, yeah, like walking this fine line of making the song catchy and also making sure that it's telling the story. So yeah, we're always working together. And there was a few times where Andrew was just kind of like, I wrote this whole song. He's like, it just came to me and I couldn't think of anything else. And I really think that this is, you know, like Ghost in the Mist was just like, he just said the whole track before any of us had ever listened to it. And luckily I was like, yeah, that's perfect. So it was just kind of like, let's go with it. And so there's sometimes that happens, but most of the time it's just kind of like, okay, like what do we need here? How did that
mm.
song end? What's happening next? How do we make it so that they move together, but also that this song stands on its own and that it has its own thing that's cool about it and memorable? Yeah, it's just like a constant kind of juggling of balls.
But that, I find it very interesting because I talk to other metal bands about this as well, where I mean you're playing with some really great musicians, very technically skilled, and as you mentioned just now, finding the balance between commerciality and telling the story, but also in terms of technical prowess versus uh, setting an atmosphere or feeling, conveying a feeling. Is it
Right.
is that all what does that all happen in the studio, or is that thought of beforehand? Because I can
Well, I
imagine
mean,
for Andrew, for instance, the story you mentioned, I'm sure he has plenty of ideas.
oh yes, yeah, yeah, for sure. And there were definitely moments where he was like, "Why don't I just put a little over this part?" And I'd be like, "No, no, you gotta let it breathe," you know? Or like, "Can you chill the melody out here? Like this is the vocal part. Like can't sing over this. You're taking all the attention," you know, that kind of stuff. Definitely, that has absolutely happened. There for sure are moments when he will write like a verse and it'll be like super simple and nice and open and airy. And I'll be like, yes, perfect. I can write a really catchy vocal line over this. And then he'll come back with demo number two and there's like a huge guitar melody in there. I'll be like, Andrew, what are you doing? And they were like, oh, I just thought it needed something. I was like, yes, and it will have something when my vocals are there. So that definitely happens. Grant, I would say, is a little more understanding on that front sometimes. Like he'll be like, and then this part is just open chords, Britt, and you can do whatever you want. And I'll be like, yes, thank you. But then there was also moments where in the studio where the intro would be kind of be something a little bit more airy and ethereal or something, and we would all be kind of like, you know, and then Andrew would be like, "What about this?" And then he'd throw something in there, and we were like, "Oh, yes, yeah, that's exactly what it needed." Or like there was a point where he added it in like the right before we hit the studio. Always, what we do is we demo every song, and so demo the vocals, and it's all done, and and then that way we know exactly what we're doing when we get into the studio, when the money starts flying out of our pockets, so that we're like on track, and everything is done and ready, and we don't have to think, we just do. And so the very last moment before we hit the studio, Andrew sent like a little kind of rough mix master of all the demos to be like, okay, here's the album. And there was a part that he had added in one of the songs, and I was like, what is this? Like, this sounds really good. This wasn't in here before, right? And he'd be like, no, yeah, sorry, just kind of threw that in there. And we're all, okay, no, that's great. It sounds great. So things, yeah, for sure. I mean, they're changing constantly, and I don't even like to write the lyrics until we're in the studio because for "Behold the Devastation," when we did the same thing. We were ready to go. Each song written, fully, completely done, fully demoed out, and we got in there, and I went to record my parts, and I was like, "Why isn't this working? What's going on?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, we changed that part, like all of it." Like the whole part has changed. And I was like, what? Oh man. Like, so now, and I was like, my first time in the studio, and then I had to write something on the spot, and I was just like nervous as hell. So I was just like, oh God, okay, so I'm never doing this to myself again. So I would always, yeah, write, wait till the very last moment to write the lyrics, because vocal melodies, at least you can change, move things around. But lyrics are like, this is what's happening. So I always wait now to the very end when we're in the studio to write the lyrics, to make sure that, and the boys will kind of send me a super rough of whatever they did in the studio that day, and then I'll sit down that night and write the lyrics. But that was really difficult on this round, having
Okay.
a 6-month-old in the studio with me.
Oh wow.
So
Yeah, of course.
oh yeah, this isn't gonna work like it always does. So that was tough. But
Very quickly,
so
I have one more question, but I don't know if you have another interview. If you have another one,
no,
I'll
you're
let you
my
go.
last one. You're my
Okay,
last one. You're good to go.
if you'll indulge me, I have one more
For
question,
sure.
because that was what I was thinking about, because you are a young mom, you have a new child, and doing this whole band thing, and then going with the um, not potential, what's the word? Doesn't matter. You're going on on the road this year. What have the thoughts been? What have the planning been? It seems like if I hear you talk about the studio and how detail oriented you guys work, I'll sure you'll figure out. But has that been a thing in the back of your mind?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's been like a wrench in things for
Okay.
ever since she was born. It's just like, how are we gonna do this? Um, because it's harder for us because both Scott and I are in the
Right.
band.
Right.
So we can't just, leave her behind with one of the parents where, where she'll be safe and feel fine. So yeah, it's been a struggle. We took her with us to the festivals that we played last year, and she, she was okay, but it was a struggle. And flying everywhere, constantly moving, from city to city was just like, oh, I could see it wearing her down. And she's young, and of course she's got
Sure.
endless energy, but having your sleep schedule kind of destroyed is constantly not good. So we were
But
like,
also
okay,
not good for the parents, right? I mean,
yeah,
your sleep schedule suffers, I suppose, as well.
absolutely, yes, it does. Yeah. Um, so then we did these 4 shows in the east of Eastern Canada, and we were like, okay, so we'll leave her behind, with Grandma and Grandpa, see how that works. And she hated that, so it was just kind of like, like what do we do here? And honestly, we're still trying to figure it out. So
Okay.
we're just kind of taking it day by day and doing whatever we can to, you know, to book tours and things that aren't, you know, super extended
Mm,
away time away and that aren't super intense or anything. So we're doing Australia in June and we're going to leave her behind with grandma and grandpa again and hope that, you know, she's a little bit older now and that maybe it might be something that she can handle now. But yeah, it's definitely been constant in the forefront of organizing everything for sure.
sure. And then you are going on tour in the United States with Powerwolf. Is that a
Mhm.
big deal for you?
Yeah, I mean, we're so excited. We can't wait. It's yeah, it's going to be unlike anything we've ever done before, so that's great. And headlining is hard work. Headlining is
Sure.
constant and it's yeah, it's tiring. So we're really excited to be the openers. It's funny. We're just like we haven't opened for, you know, a band on a tour since like 2017. You know, it's
Sure.
just like, oh my goodness, because we've been just kind of doing the grind, trying to grow. So yeah, we're really excited about that. We think it's going to be a fun time. Um, and we have so many friends and fans down in the States that we just can't wait to go back and see them and play for them all and get back up on stage and hang out with them. So it's gonna be a really good time. I think that we're probably looking forward to that for the most. Yeah.
Sounds awesome. Brittany, may I thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.